Namaste all, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. Today we begin a new chapter, chapter 13, exclusive concentration of consciousness force and the ignorance.
So, before we start this new chapter, let us see what he has said in the previous chapter, and particularly the last paragraph of the previous chapter. So, he is trying to find out how ignorance is coming. So, the Advaita philosophy says that there is only one ultimate reality, right from the highest to the lowest, and there cannot be any ignorance in the Supreme. The Divine cannot have any ignorance. How can that be possible? So, how is it that yet we see in the physical world here, man is ignorant? So, from where is it coming? If the Divine, and we are starting from the Advaita philosophy, that everything in the physical world and the subtle worlds and beyond the worlds is all Brahman, and that is only one reality, nothing else is there, it is the Satchidananda. So, if that is so, then how come there is this imperfection of ignorance? That's what he is discussing. And in the previous paragraph, he has discussed the origin of ignorance, and he is saying, let us look very carefully. So, he has gone step by step from matter to life to mind, and he is seeing that there is consciousness which is operating. Okay? So, we have to look for the origin of ignorance in the operation of consciousness. It is consciousness that is the opposite of ignorance. So, from where is it coming? At what point of consciousness is the ignorance coming? So, I'll read out the summary of the last para of the previous chapter. Then we'll start reading the new one. So, we have concluded at the end of the previous chapter that ignorance is not and cannot be in the Satchidananda. It's not possible. Nor is it in the supermind. Nor is it an inevitable necessity even in the multiplicity of our life. Yes, we see that there is ignorance here, but it's not necessarily so. It's possible to remain in the body-mind life and yet not be ignorant. Okay, that's what he has said. It comes in, the ignorance comes in at an intermediate stage. It's a product of work in progress. When mind commences its dividing action, mind, the dividing element, when it separates itself from the supramental state and culminates in the mistaken identification with body, life, mind, which is a physical form, creates ignorance by separating action. So, mind is the one. You must remember the principle of the one becoming the many. At the highest level there is totally unity, only one. And at the lower level we can see that there is multiplicity. Okay, everything is separate. So, the law of one becoming the many, you must remember. Where does it start? He has told us that it starts at the overmind level. The overmind consciousness is the highest plane of the spiritual planes of consciousness. Just below the supermind. There is a barrier of light which is translucent, not transparent, but translucent. Translucency is, you see that window pane, it is transparent. I can see through it, and the light also is coming through it. But the separation between the supermind and the overmind is translucent. It's a barrier, yet not a barrier. There is a connection between the two, and yet there is a difference. So it is starting from there. That's what he's saying. Okay, so now he says that when we come down here, there are forms. You are a form, this is a form, the computer is a form, this table is a form. Everything in the physical world has form. So now he's asking the question, what is form actually? Is it something stable? Is it something permanent? What is form? And he has told us last time that nothing is permanent in this physical world, that everything is a reaction between incoming forces and outgoing forces. So last time we discussed this in detail. I can just remind you because this is something so interesting. Okay, that form is something which is receiving forces from outside, and some forces are going out from it. So in other words, the form is nothing but a constant movement of inward forces and outward forces. Difficult to imagine that, but we can think of the human body. Okay, every day we are ingesting food, so we are never the same, we have changed. And we are also throwing out material from our body, perspiration and so many other ways it is going out. So you are a constant changing form, yet you seem to be permanent. Okay, this is form. And we gave the idea, two examples we gave, which is very interesting. The tornado, the whirlwind, okay, it seems to have a form. It's a form that is moving, and the form is moving. But actually, what is it? There's nothing in it, it's only air. And yet you feel that it's got a form. So there's an incoming wind and an outgoing wind. So it is this movement that creates the form. And this truth is there for everything. There is no permanent form at all in the physical world, yet you feel that there are permanent forms. The other example was the wave. When you are sitting there at the seaside and watching the wave coming towards you, you get the impression that it's a body of water, the same body of water which is coming towards you. Nothing of the sort. The wave is formed by the movement of each. If you throw a cork on the sea, on the surface of the sea, you will see that when a wave comes, that cork goes up and comes down. It's not traveling with the wave. It's just going up and down. This movement of up and down, this force, is creating the illusion of a wave coming to you. So this is a form. Okay? So now, he says, what exactly is form? We may define form in this manner. There is an infinite sea of consciousness or force of existence. In this sea of infinite force, a small whirl of energy forms itself by concentrated inward movement, and it becomes clearly distinguishable from the infinite background of a featureless expanse of force or substance or consciousness. This is much like a whirlpool in a calm, stable sea, or a tornado in a vast expanse of windless air. The air itself is, the whirlwind is taking a form in this vast sea. Then he goes on to say, this form is created by force. Tapas. Tapas is the concentration of force in motion. It is this constant whirl of energy that maintains the apparent stable form. There is nothing stable, and yet it maintains the stable form. See? Apparently. Okay. When you were a newborn baby, you were 7 pounds, and now you are, and yet you feel that it is the same. Okay, and yet totally you have changed. So this is exactly true of all forms. They are constantly changing, but the change is so slow that you don't perceive it. But over a period of time, you will be able to perceive the change. Okay, so if you look at me now, you will not say that I am becoming thinner and thinner. But you see me after 10 days, people tell me that you have become thinner. So with a gap, you can compare and then you see. So the movement is very slow. Okay, so that's what he's saying. Then, form is created by force, tapas, concentrated force in motion. And if this movement of consciousness, if this movement of conscious force is absent, there can be no form. Movement creates form. All forms are therefore, whether animate or inanimate, nothing but a condensed mass of whirling energy, which is tapas, or substance or consciousness. Each finite form is created, maintained, and ultimately destroyed by the mass movement of tapas. Tapas is concentration, and concentration always produces heat. The individual finite exists only by the permission of the infinite. It's the infinite that moves and creates the illusion of forms. Okay? So, to trace the origin of ignorance, we have to investigate the separating and dividing action of force in the form. At our physical level, this is seen as the mind consciousness identifying itself with the body-mind life. Then, this form builds a wall of separation, the ego, which breaks up the whole into independent parts. You are one form, I am one form, everybody else is one form. As a mind consciousness identifying itself with body-mind life. Then this form builds a wall of separation which breaks up the whole into independent parts. Not really independent, but seemingly independent. Okay, so ignorance has to be seen in the individual mental being identifying itself with the body, life and mind. We have also to see it in the universal apparent inconscience of physical nature. So ignorance in the human being and ignorance also in the cosmos. Okay, so this is what he has said in the previous paragraph. Now he has already given us a hint that this is because of concentration, exclusive concentration. When you are concentrating on one particular thing, you are forgetting everything else. This is the nature of ignorance.
I'm going to ask you to comment on a statement by the mother, a little bit tangential. Without him, we exist not.
Yeah. You could interpret this in one way. You go back to the Sankhya philosophy of Purusha and Prakriti. Okay? It is the Sri Aurobindo who was the force behind allowing mother to act in the physical world. So you could say that the relation is between Chit and Shakti. So it is Chit which is allowing Shakti to exist. If Chit did not exist, Shakti cannot exist. So you can think of it in this way. Okay? Without him, I would not exist. I is the Prakriti aspect of the Divine Mother, action oriented. Sri Aurobindo is the Purusha aspect, the knowledge aspect supporting the action of the. And this was actually so. When Mother was running the ashram, Sri Aurobindo's force was always behind her, supporting her. So this statement that you made just now, this is the explanation. That without the Chit, there can be no action. There can be no force.
So we'll begin chapter 13.
Yes. Chapter 13, exclusive concentration of consciousness force, Chit Shakti, and the ignorance. From the kindled fire of energy of consciousness, truth was born, and the law of truth. From that, the night. From the night, the flowing ocean of being. So first of all, there is a Satchidananda, and there is energy of consciousness. The energy of consciousness concentrates and creates the universe. And there also is creating the law of truth. From that, the night. So the night is actually the shunyam, the emptiness that is there. This is what you experience when you go to the self. So first the divine creates a cosmos, and if you go to the cosmic consciousness, you see the night, the total absence of any feature. And then from there, the flowing ocean of being. See, the night is the static part, the second level of the spiritual planes of consciousness, And the third level is the movement. And when the movement comes in, there is ignorance is born then. It is movement that creates the ignorance. When there is no movement, there is clarity of vision and there is knowledge.
So from the unknown comes the known.
That's right.
And in the known is ignorance.
There is one stage in between. That's the night. Okay? That's why you have three levels. You have the transcendent, you have the cosmos, and then you have the individual beings. So the ignorance is starting in the second level itself, from overmind level. The ignorance starts from there, but it culminates in total ignorance in matter. Man is just coming out, so he has a lot of ignorance still in him, but he is beginning to get the knowledge. It may be physical knowledge, but also spiritual knowledge. But even the spiritual knowledge, according to the Isha Upanishad, is also an ignorance. If you don't know the whole, if you don't know the transcendent, the cosmic and the individual, you are also yet in ignorance only. They make a very categorical statement in the Isha Upanishad that in a sense, here you are in darkness. You are ignorant. When you go to the level 2 of the self, you are in knowledge. But if you think that is the knowledge and this is the ignorance, then you are also in ignorance. Because you must understand that this ignorance also is part of the Supreme. They are not two different things, but they are the same thing in different forms. Saguna, Nirguna. So, here there are very clearly three stages. First is the kindled fire of energy, consciousness, truth. Second is the night. The night is the second level of consciousness of the spiritual planes. And then finally you have the flowing ocean of being is the physical world. There is no flow in the second level. There is no flow. It's immutable, static. So, now we start reading the text. Since Brahman is in the essentiality of his universal being a unity and a multiplicity, aware of each other and in each other, aware of each other and in each other, and since in its reality it is something beyond the one and the many, containing both, aware of both, ignorance can only come about as a subordinate phenomenon by some concentration of consciousness absorbed in a part knowledge or a part action of the being and excluding the rest from its awareness. There may be either a concentration of the one in itself to the exclusion of the many, excuse me, or of the many in their own action to the exclusion of the all awareness of the one, or of the individual being in himself to the exclusion both of the one and the rest of the many, who are then to him separated units, not included in his direct awareness. Or again, there may intervene at a certain point some general rule of exclusive concentration, operative in all these three directions, a concentration of separative active consciousness in a separative movement. But this takes place not in the true self, but in the force of active being in Prakriti. So, pretty complex, but let's have a look at it. Okay? So, in those use of words, we must be very careful, and once you know what he means by this word, then things become easier. Okay, so first he is talking of the Supreme Brahman, the highest level. Since Brahman is in the essentiality of his universal being a unity, okay, but also a multiplicity. Okay, a unity there and also a multiplicity here, aware of each other and in each other. So, aware of each other and in each other. It is there in the second level, it is also there in the first level, in each other. in you, in me, in everybody else. Okay, so this is Brahman aware of each other and in each other, of each other and in each other. And he is beyond the one and the many. Where is the one and where is the many? The many is at level 1 here in the physical world. The one starts already at the spiritual planes of consciousness. You start realizing the unity of everything. Okay? But the Brahman, the essentiality, is beyond both one and the many. So these are the 3 levels that he is talking about: the transcendent, the cosmic, and the individual. Okay? At the individual level, many. At the cosmic level, the one. And the transcendent, the supermind, beyond both. That is the true knowledge. Even the one is not the true knowledge. Although in India, most people who are practicing yoga were very satisfied with the one. You get liberation and you get peace, and you are not, it's not necessary for you to be born again. So you are very satisfied with that, and the problems and the troubles of level 1 in the physical world, death, suffering, all these things disappear. You don't need to come. The soul is free to do what it wants. It can disappear into the infinite. It can continue to live in the spiritual planes of consciousness. It has a choice. So, containing both, aware of both, ignorance can only come about as a subordinate phenomenon by some concentration of consciousness absorbed in a part knowledge or a part action of the being and excluding the rest from its awareness. So, where does this part knowledge start? It starts in the supermind. You have the one. In the overmind level, you have the beginnings of the many. The many starts at that level. Everything in the physical world is represented by a god. And in the overmind plane of consciousness, which is the home of all the gods. So, all the gods are really essentially one and yet different. In the Vedas, in the secret of the Veda, he has explained this very clearly, that essentially all the gods are the same. And yet they are different. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, okay? Then all the other aspects, they are all Agni. All the different aspects and yet essentially one. So that starts at that level, the multiplicity, the dividing action. The moment there is multiplicity at the supramental level, but there is total awareness of oneness and multiplicity. But when you come down only into the multiplicity, then the problem starts, the problem of ignorance. He is saying part knowledge and part action of the being and excluding the rest from its awareness. So, we'll give one example of what is this exclusive concentration, then it will be clear. Okay, so we usually give the example of a mechanic. Okay, he is concentrating on the repairing the automobile. Okay, now he is concentrating fully on this. Now he has got so many other knowledge. He knows he has a sister at home. He knows that he is educated up to a certain level. He knows that he lives at such an address. He knows all these things. But all these things, knowledge, so-called knowledge, disappears when he is concentrating only on the job. Okay? And he can recover that information. As soon as he stops his exclusive concentration and he's finished his job, he recovers all that knowledge very easily. But in the spiritual field, the recovery of this knowledge that you are the Supreme is not easy. It's the opposite. In the physical world, this exclusive concentration is only an example of the spiritual exclusive concentration. But there it's very difficult to get back all the knowledge that you knew. That's why in a spiritual experience, you often feel, I knew this all along. You sort of remember. It was only put away into the background of your consciousness. It's not something new that I am experiencing. I knew it all along, but I had forgotten about it. That's the feeling that you get when you get the spiritual experience. Okay, so now he is talking of the many combinations possible. Okay, by some concentration absorbed in the part knowledge or part action of the being, and excluding the rest from its awareness. There may be either a concentration of the one in itself to the exclusion of the many. This is the transcendent. So, there may be either a concentration of the one in itself to the exclusion of the many. So, the transcendent consciousness he is concentrating only inwards. No creation and no universe, nothing exists. So, this is the one aspect of the divine, the transcendent. Or he is saying, or of the many in their own action to the exclusion of the all awareness of the one. That is our condition. But it is the divine who is conscious of the many and he has forgotten about the many, the one. So this is also possible, that also is possible. A third possibility also may be there. Okay? Exclusion of all awareness. Or of the individual being in himself to the exclusion both of the one and the rest of the many, who are then to him separated units not included in the direct awareness. So, the transcendent, he knows only the one, he doesn't know the many. Then you come to the cosmic level. In the cosmic level, there is what he is saying, aware both, ignorant, containing both, aware of both. You know the one as you know the many. Finally, in the individual, he is saying about the individual, or of the individual being in himself to the exclusion both of the one. To the exclusion both of the one and the rest of the many. In the individual, we have forgotten that we are part of the many, and we have also forgotten about the one that we came from. We know nothing of the divine, and we know nothing that you are separate from me. That's the third possibility. Transcendent, cosmic and individual. Okay? So, of the individual being in himself to the exclusion both of the one and the rest of the many, who are then to him separated units not included in his direct awareness. So, we repeat again, level 1, the many. You are separate from me and I feel that you are all separate. I see only the many and I see a multiplicity. I don't see the oneness of anything at all. Okay? In the second level, you start seeing the oneness of everything. In the third level, you are conscious of both. The many, the one, and the third level, both, beyond the one and the many. Okay? No. Clear picture? Okay. So, and there is the many who are then to him separated units, not included in his direct awareness. Or again, there may be, or there may intervene at a certain point, some general rule of exclusive concentration operative in all these three directions. Okay? A concentration of separative active consciousness in a separative movement. But this takes place not in the true self, but in the force of active being in Prakriti. So, here the chapter in the Life Divine, the triple status of the supermind. So, there is a reflection of that here. So, I will refer to that again so that the whole picture begins. First of all, there is a transcendent. Okay? There is the ocean, which is static. It is vast, infinite, only one. Only the sea exists. Now at the second level, that sea starts forming the waves. But not waves as yet, only the swell. Okay? That's the second level of the supermind. Only the wave, the beginning of the many is there. The swell is coming. You understand the swell? It's not a wave yet. Okay? So at that level, if a man experiences that consciousness, at that level you go, you will realize that you are part of the one, but you are also an individual. The wave, that swell, knows that I am a separate wave, but I am also part of the sea. Then when the wave becomes absolutely very clear cut in the third level, you are beginning to forget that you are part of the many. You are part of the one. You are part of the sea. So, only the sea, the swells coming, and at that level, each wave, each individual he knows that I am part of the sea, but I am also beginning to be separate from everything else. In the third level, I am part of the sea, but I am more the individual. This is how the separation starts. That's what he is referring to here. He says, or again there may intervene at a certain point some general rule of exclusive concentration operative in all these three directions. The one becoming the many, and the many knowing that I am part of the one. So these are the triple status of supermind. Okay? And in the Upanishads they refer to as the one in the many in the one, and the one becoming the many. This is what he is describing here in different words. Okay? Now, this hypothesis, I go to the next para. This hypothesis we adopt in preference to the others because none of the others taken by itself will hold or will square with all the facts of existence. I read the whole para, then we'll come back to it. Integral Brahman cannot be in its integrality the source of the ignorance, because its integrality is in its very nature all consciousness. The one cannot in its integral conscious being exclude the many from itself, because the many would not then at all exist. At most, it can stand back somewhere in its consciousness from the cosmic play, so as to enable a similar movement in the individual being. The many in the integrality or in each self of the many cannot be really ignorant of the one or of others, because by the many we mean the same divine self in all, individualized indeed, but still one in conscious being with all in a single universality, and one too with the original and transcendent being. Ignorance is therefore not the natural character of the consciousness of the soul, even of the individual soul. It is the outcome of some particularizing action in the executive conscious force when it is absorbed in its works and forgetful of self and of the total reality of the nature. This action cannot be that of the whole being or of the whole force of being. For the character of that completeness is whole consciousness and not partial consciousness. It must be a superficial or partial movement absorbed in a superficial or partial action of the consciousness, and the energy concentrated in its formation, oblivious of all else that is not included in the formation or not there overtly operative. Ignorance is nature's purposeful oblivion of the self and the all, leaving them aside, putting them behind herself in order to do solely what she has to do in some outer play of existence. So very clearly he is telling you that there is no ignorance anywhere. And if at all there is ignorance, it is intended, because I have to do a particular work. As I give you the example, someone concentrating on repairing a motorbike or whatever, he has forgotten everything else. He has to concentrate on this one. So the third level, where the multiplicity is there, the divine is being exclusive because it has to do a particular work in the physical world, in the many. So that is ignorance. It's a willed putting away of all things which it knows so that it can do a particular work with concentration.
There's an interesting story, I'm sure you remember, about Albert, who said to Mother, "I don't want to do any yoga. I want to do your work." And Mother said, "You will be my tailor."
You will be my?
Tailor.
Oh.
And he had to learn tailoring. "I know nothing about tailoring." Mother said, "You will be my tailor." Exclusive concentration.
Exactly.
But she was doing his yoga.
That's right. Okay. So, it's a little complex because he is using a very philosophical language, but essentially the beginning of the many is the breaking of the one into the many, and when you are dividing yourself into the many, a time comes when each of the many starts thinking that he is only him and nothing else. In the level 2, you are aware of yourself as an individual, yet you are aware that there is I am part of the whole. But in the physical world, you have forgotten that you are part of the whole.
But it is the divine who is doing all of
Yes,
this.
that's right. That's why he's making a difference
You have
between
to
soul
remember that.
and individual soul.
Yes.
Very clearly, he made a difference between soul and individual soul. It's the divine soul which seems to separate itself into individual souls. But when you go to level 2 of the spiritual planes of consciousness, you realize that my soul is the same as everybody else's soul. That's a cosmic consciousness. So that oneness starts at the second level, but you then don't pay attention too much to the many. There is a difference between the spirit and matter. So you have to go beyond both to go to the transcendent level, and there you see that each one is valid in its own place, and the totality is made up of everything. So there is no ignorance as such. We normally give a very pejorative turn of meaning to the word ignorance. But ignorance is not what you think it to be. It's not something negative. It's a purposeful reduction of all my knowledge so that I can concentrate on one particular job. That's what he's saying. Then you may wonder, so it is not necessarily so. So in other words, even when you are in the physical world, if you are identified with your soul, not your body, mind, life, if you are identified with your soul, you can have the consciousness of the one and the many in the physical world even. Ignorance is not a necessity. The Buddhists and the Mayavadins say it's a necessity. When you are here in the physical world, you are necessarily in ignorance. Sri Aurobindo denies that. He says that you can be here, even here, with a full knowledge. It's possible.
And the ego's part? The part of the ego.
Ego is the one that makes you feel separate from everybody else. And that's why when you go to the spiritual level of consciousness, the ego disappears. It's a trick of nature to concentrate you and make your action effective, and it's a point de repère. It's a point of reference that all I am doing, thinking and acting, it is me who is doing. So the ego is really a shadow of the self. But it's a contraption, it's a mechanism of nature to centralize your consciousness. That's what he's saying. I'll do one thing. The second para, I'll read the summary. Okay? Yeah. Now, Sri Aurobindo is saying that we will go according to the theory that I've just now told you. That there are three levels. There is the transcendent, there is the cosmic, and there is the individual. Because all the other theories, he's saying, all other theories will not hold when all the data of existence is considered in full. Because the Buddhistic theory, the Mayavada theory, they all don't think of the third level. They only think of level 1 and level 2, spirit and matter. And they say, if I am here, spirit is unreal to me, and if I am in spirit, matter is unreal to me. So there is a dichotomy between the two. So either you reject that or you reject this. In Life Divine, you have the two chapters right in the beginning. Okay? The refusal of the ascetic and the materialist denial. If you are here, there is no God for you. And if you are there, the physical world disappears for you. But Siddha is saying both are there, and that is an ignorance. So you go to the third level, you see that each thing is valid at its own level. It's the same thing that is taking different forms.
So when Buddhists go to that second level, they are perfectly satisfied.
Oh yes, more than satisfied. But according to Sri Aurobindo, that is not a solution, because the problem of ignorance still remains, the problem of suffering remains, the problem of death remains. But his theory is that even here, it is not necessary that the law of death should be permanent, not necessary. When the supramental race comes, death will disappear for that race, not for everybody, only for that race. So his theory is totally different. Divine is everywhere. Basing himself on Advaita, he is going one step more and bringing in evolution. As we said, when you were born, you were a 7-pound baby, and now but yet you are still the same. You are the same at that level and same here now, although you are now 6 feet tall. So exactly, the transcendent and the cosmic and the individual are really the same in different grades, exactly in the same way. But when you are here, you don't think like that. When you go to the third level, you will realize that that's what Sri is saying. We have the mental knowledge, but mental knowledge is not enough. You have to experience it. Okay, so I am reading the summary. All other theories will not hold when all the data of existence is considered in full. The integral Brahman cannot be the source of ignorance. Integral Brahman, he knows everything. So how can there be ignorance? If the one excludes the many from its integral consciousness, then the many would not even exist. It is possible that the consciousness of the many is held back in the consciousness of the one in some background recess, nor can the consciousness of the many in the individual exclude knowledge of the one, because the consciousness of the many in the individual is nothing but the divine self immanent in each form. Okay. Then, so we can say that the individual soul cannot necessarily have ignorance as its innate nature. What the others are saying, if you are in your body-mind life and you are here, you are born in the physical world, you are bound to be ignorant. Sri Aurobindo is denying that. It's possible to be in the physical world without ignorance, without the partial view. Okay,
so all Western philosophy is incorrect.
I wouldn't say incorrect.
When it says you are born in sin.
Yeah, that is an exaggeration. It's an exaggeration. Instead of the word sin, better to use the word ignorance. Then you are nearer the truth. But sin is, everybody is not sinning. So that's a Christian theory which is not valid in Sri Aurobindo, at least. So we can say that the individual soul cannot necessarily have ignorance as its innate nature. Ignorance comes into existence with the particularizing action of the Chit Shakti when it is engaged in creating. In the creation of a particular form, there is a purposeful forgetfulness of all knowledge not relevant to the task at hand. Okay? So, this is what he is saying. When I am creating the universe is limited. It seems to be infinite, but compared to the infinite spirit, the infinity of the physical world is very small. Oh, by the way, it's interesting, even science admits that there are levels of infinity. Don't think that infinity is only one infinity. There are levels of infinities. So when the divine is infinite and he has to create the seemingly finite world, he has to necessarily concentrate on creating the finite. So ignorance comes in. That's what he's saying. In the infinity of being and its infinite awareness, concentration of consciousness, tapas, is always present as an inherent power of consciousness force. It is a self-held or self-gathered dwelling of the eternal awareness in itself and on itself or on its object. But the object is always in some way itself, its own being or a manifestation and movement of its being. The concentration may be essential. It may be even a soul indwelling or an entire absorption in the essence of its own being, a luminous or else a self-oblivious self-immersion. Or it may be an integral or else a total multiple or a part multiple concentration. Or it may be a single separative regard on one field of its being or movement. A single or it may be a single separative regard on one field of its being or movement. A single pointed concentration in one center or an absorption in one objective form of its self-existence. The first, the essential, is at one end the superconscious silence and at the other end the inconscience. The second, the integral, is a total consciousness of Satchidananda, the supramental concentration. The third, the multiple, is the method of the totalizing or global overmental awareness. The fourth, the separative, is the characteristic nature of the ignorance. Okay. The supreme integrality of the Absolute holds all these states or powers of its consciousness together in a single indivisible whole, looking at all itself in manifestation with a simultaneous self-vision. Complex, but we have to see what he's saying. We'll go sentence by sentence. We'll try to see what he's saying. In the infinity of being and its infinite awareness at the highest level, concentration of consciousness, tapas, is always present as an inherent power of consciousness force. We have to understand this. At our level, we can concentrate on one job. Usually our mind is diffused. But if you want to do a particular work, you have to concentrate. Forget everything else and concentrate. This is tapas at the highest level. The power of the consciousness to reduce itself and concentrate on one point. Okay? This is in a way you can speak of it as the transcendent. Because the transcendent is not creating. It is focused on itself. There is no creation there. Okay? So this is tapas. Tapas is, we know in the physical world also that when you compress a gas, okay, it lets off heat. That's the principle in the refrigerator also. That's how it is used. That gas which is there is concentrated into a liquid, and then it is made to go in the, and it absorbs all the heat from the, and becomes hot itself, and at the back of the refrigerator the heat is let out. And again the whole process is started. So concentration produces heat. Any creation necessarily is a concentration. When an artist is creating, he is concentrating. When there is any creation, there is always a concentration. They go together. That is tapas. Okay, so tapas is always present as an inherent power of consciousness force. It seems very obvious to us that this is not something fantastic, but consciousness has got 3 powers, he says, in the synthesis. It can know anything, it can acquire anything, and it can also become anything. So how can it become something? It has this power, these powers are there. So tapas is one of those powers which it can concentrate itself and identify itself with anything it wants. Okay. So tapas is there as a inherent power of consciousness force. So consciousness force, chit shakti, okay, and the power to concentrate itself or diffuse itself. When it concentrates itself, it is the transcendent. When it diffuses itself, it is creating the universe. And then the other law comes in, the one becoming the many. So it distributes itself. So the inherent power of consciousness force, it is a self-held or self-gathered dwelling of the eternal awareness in itself and on itself and on its object. So now there are 3 things. As eternal awareness in itself and on itself. That's a transcendent. It's not creating anything else. It is just concentrating on itself or on its object. Now that's interesting because Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda. So when creation takes place, the Chit is telling Shakti, create for me. Chit is separating itself from Shakti and telling itself, create something for me. Okay? Purusha is telling Prakriti, create something. So it's an object within itself. So that also is possible. So it can concentrate in itself or it can concentrate on an object which is apparently not itself in itself. But that in itself seems to become here the not in itself but outside itself. It becomes the many. That's the ignorance. That's the origin of the ignorance. Okay. On itself or its object. But the object is always in some way itself. Because you are basing yourself on the Advaita philosophy, there is nothing else except Satchidananda. So when it is creating in itself. It is creating the many, apparent many in itself. It cannot create anything outside itself. There is nothing outside itself. In itself, outside. But the object is always in some way itself, its own being or a manifestation and movement of its being. Okay? You can call it a manifestation. The concentration may be essential. It may be even a soul indwelling or an entire absorption in the essence of its own being. A luminous or else a self-oblivious self-immersion. So, a luminous absorption is the soul indwelling is the transcendent. A self-oblivious self-immersion is at the physical level. Self-oblivious. I want to forget myself and become the opposite of myself. Okay, so self-immersion. It is plunging itself into the opposite of itself, what it has created. Or it may be an integral or else a total multiple or a part multiple concentration. It could be something in between. or it may be a single separative regard on one field of its being or movement. It can do that. Instead of concentrating on everything, it can concentrate only on one thing. Or it may be a single separative regard on one field of its being or movement. A single pointed concentration in one center or an absorption in one objective form of its self-existence. What he means by this is creating the individual. You are the individual, you are actually the divine who has decided to become the individual and forget everything else. That's what he seems to say. The first, the essential, is at one end the superconscious silence. We spoke of the transcendent. And the other end, the inconscience. The second, the integral, is the total consciousness of Satchidananda, the supramental concentration. The third, the multiple, is the method of the totalizing or global overmental awareness. So you can see now, he is dividing between the transcendent, the supermind, and the overmind. Okay? Global overmental awareness. The fourth, the separative, is the characteristic nature of the ignorance. So the moment it comes down, and the ignorance begins. Ignorance is the beginning of the many. So, the supreme integrality of the Absolute holds all these states and powers of its consciousness together in a single, indivisible being, looking at itself, looking at all itself in manifestation with a simultaneous self-vision. So what he is saying is that it can concentrate itself entirely there, or it can concentrate itself entirely here, or it can also concentrate in the middle, and the reality is from high above, you can see all these things. In the supramental consciousness, you will be able to see all these planes, different planes of consciousness. So,
thank you, Ranga.
it's quite complicated, and we have to use a lot of imagination to be able to. Not easy, but our imagination can help a little bit. Okay, we stop here.
Namaste all. Namaste. We will see you again on Monday, continuing on page 604, concentration in this sense.